stones named me Luna of House Fenris. The pack answered by trying to break me. By the time it was over, one girl was kneeling. Derek wanted blood, and the elder Lunas had stepped out of legend to stop a war before it began. Chapter 4. Luna of House Fenris. The echoes of the stones had not yet settled when the challenge came, not rising out of the noise, but cutting through it, sharp enough that it seemed to divide the air itself before the room had a chance to breathe again. "You're no Luna." I turned before I realized I had moved, my body reacting faster than thought. And the moment I saw her, the recognition did not come slowly or uncertainly. It struck all at once, tightening something low in my chest before I could stop it. The girl from the bus. The memory came with her, not as something recalled, but as something that pressed in, immediate and physical. The smell of rubber and dust, the uneven vibration beneath my knees, the heat of bodies packed too close together, and the sound of laughter that had seemed louder then than it had any right to be. She climbed toward me now, with that same certainty in her gaze, that same ease, as if nothing had changed, as if I were still exactly where she had left me.
"You're just Omega Filth,"
she said, her voice steady, carrying without effort.
"Low, fit only for crawling on your belly before us, serving us. That's all you've ever been, and that's all you'll ever be."
The words should have felt different here. They didn't. They landed in the same place, the same pressure tightening in my chest, the same instinct rising unbidden, the urge to fold inward, to make myself smaller, to disappear before the attention settled too fully. Luna still felt like something spoken about me, not something I could stand inside. A few wolves laughed, but it wasn't the sound that held me. It was what sat beneath it, the quick flick of their eyes toward Derek, the need to align, to be seen standing in the right place before anything else could shift. She stopped just below me, close enough that I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her teeth pressed together just slightly too hard, as if something in her needed to be held in place.
"The stones can choke on their mistake,"
she said, her gaze fixed on mine.
"You'll never lead Fenris. Not here. Not while wolves like me breathe."
For a moment, the stone beneath my feet lost its certainty. It didn't give way completely, but it softened just enough that memory slipped through before I could stop it, my body following before my mind could intervene. The pressure of the bus floor against my knees, my hands curling against it, my throat closing when I tried to speak. I felt it again, not fully, but enough, and she saw it. Her expression shifted, not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would have noticed, but I saw the satisfaction settle into place, the way her posture eased as she recognized something familiar.
"See? She remembers what she is,"
she called to the pack. The words didn't just land. They tightened the memory, pulled it closer, made it harder to breathe around. She leaned closer.
"Go on. Show them. Get on your knees."
The silence that followed wasn't empty. It leaned forward. It expected. My nails pressed into my palms, the sting sharp enough to cut through the memory, just enough to give me something solid to hold on to. No, the word did not come easily. It had to be built, not this time. The shift inside me wasn't loud or sudden. It didn't surge or flare. It settled, quiet and deliberate, like something aligning under pressure. I stepped forward. I felt the movement as I made it, the shift of weight, the contact of my foot against the stone, the awareness of how visible it was, and I let it happen anyway. "Strange," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The stones called me Luna." I held her gaze. "Not you, Beta." I let the last word land the way she would have. Something in her tightened. She moved without warning. One moment she was standing there, and the next she was closing the distance, her hand reaching for me, with the full intent of forcing me back into the shape she understood. I moved before I thought. My hand closed around her wrist, and the world gave way. It wasn't gradual. There was no space to observe, no distance to make sense of what I was experiencing. It hit all at once, overwhelming in its clarity. Stone slammed into my back. No, hers, mine, ours. The distinction collapsed the moment I tried to hold on to it, and the impact drove the breath from my lungs, as if my body didn't understand the difference. Pain followed a heartbeat later, sharp and immediate, radiating outward in a way that forced everything else aside. Derek's voice cut through it, low, controlled.
You're the reason I failed. It's so hard to find good help these days.
Another strike.
Tell me, when will I tire of your inadequacies?
Inadequacies. It was never enough. The word landed first. More blows came after. A boot drove into my side, her side, and something gave beneath it, with a crack that I felt as clearly as if it had been my own ribs breaking under the force. But it wasn't the pain that held me there. It was what came with it, the expectation, the way her body responded, not with shock, not with resistance, but with something far more practiced, far more ingrained.
Endure this.
The command wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. It was already there. Another strike followed, then another, the rhythm settling into something her body anticipated before it happened, tightening in preparation, absorbing the impact in a way that spoke of repetition rather than surprise. And beneath it, worse than the force, worse than the pain, was the pull, the need for him to see her, not to stop, not to spare her, to notice, to approve. If she held long enough, if she didn't break, if she proved she could take what he gave without failing, he might look at her differently. The realization struck harder than anything else. This wasn't punishment. This was meaning. The strikes weren't what mattered. His disappointment was. The realization didn't release me from it. It held me fast to the floor. Not as pain, not exactly, but as something that lingered beneath it, something that had already slipped beneath the surface and taken hold somewhere deeper, where it didn't belong entirely to her anymore. My hand was still wrapped around her wrist. I could feel the tension in it now, the way her muscles had locked, the way her pulse jumped too fast beneath my fingers, uneven, struggling to find a rhythm again. But it wasn't just that. Something had opened. I could feel it at the edge of my awareness, like a door pushed too far that hadn't swung shut. And before I could decide whether to pull back, I was already leaning into it, not deliberately, not cleanly, but enough. Her breath hitched. Her aura flared sapphire, but it didn't hold its shape. The light rose, jagged and unstable, breaking at the edges, as if it couldn't decide whether it was meant to strike or defend.
You,
She started, but the word dragged, caught on something she couldn't force past, and I felt it. Not her anger, what sat beneath it, the way everything in her tightened around one need, the need to be seen, to be taken apart, measured, and found acceptable. Not gently, not kindly. My grip tightened without meaning to, because once I felt it, it kept unfolding. The pattern of it, the shape, the way her body didn't just endure what he did to her, it expected it. The words left me before I could stop them. You're still trying to earn his approval. I stopped and corrected myself tentatively. No, his love. The words hung there, heavy, irreversible, and I knew immediately I shouldn't have said that. Her eyes snapped up to mine, wide, not with anger, but with something far more exposed, something that had been pulled into the open without her permission. I started, but there was nothing to fix it with. That's not. Her aura surged, this time violently, the sapphire light slamming outward, hard enough to crack against the silver, barely rising from me, but it didn't hold. It shuddered, broke, collapsed inward again, like something unraveling too quickly to contain.
don't judge me. You don't know anything about me.
She snapped, but the force wasn't there anymore. The words frayed at the edges as they left her, because she could feel it. The connection hadn't closed. For a moment too long, we were still there, still open. Her gaze locked onto mine, and I saw the instant it landed in her, the realization that I hadn't guessed, that I hadn't thrown something out blindly. I had seen it, and if I didn't stop, I would see more. The thought struck clean and sharp. Too far. That was too far. I tried to pull back, not physically, something deeper, but it didn't break cleanly. It resisted, held open by something I hadn't meant to hold, and she knew it.
No, please.
The words slipped out of her before she could stop it. Not anger, not defiance. A plea, not to me, to the moment, to the exposure. My wolf surged in response, not in hunger, not in dominance, but in something colder, something that recognized the shift in power without needing to name it. I stepped closer. The movement wasn't fast. It didn't need to be. She felt it. The distance closed. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. Her shoulders tightening, her stance faltering just slightly, like something in her had already begun to give way. "It's okay," I said, trying to comfort her. The words came out low. For a heartbeat, she resisted. I felt it, coiled, real, the instinct to push back, to reclaim space, to refuse the pressure that had gathered around her. And then it broke, not because she couldn't fight, because she chose not to, because whatever came next, whatever I might see if she didn't, was worse. Her knees hit the stone. The sound cracked through the silence, sharp, final. The connection snapped the moment she dropped, releasing all at once, leaving me standing there with the echo of it still moving through me, my chest tight, my breath uneven, my hand still half raised where it had held her. I hadn't forced her down, but she had fallen, and the room did not see the difference. They saw her challenge me, then drop, submit. The meaning of it settled around us before I could stop it, before I could shape it into anything else. I didn't know how to stand in that. I had never been here before, never been the one left standing. My gaze dropped to her, not the beta, not the position. Her shoulders were rigid, her breathing uneven, her hands curled against the stone, like she was holding herself in place, rather than being held there. The word, caught, because I didn't know how to fix that. I hadn't meant to reach that far inside her, hadn't meant to pull something out she couldn't hide again, but I had, and there was no taking it back. The silence didn't ease. It held, stretched tight across the space between us, waiting. This was where it should end. I could feel that too, the expectation of it. Press the advantage, make it clear. That was how Fenris worked. That was how strength was proven. Instead, my hand lifted. The movement felt small, almost insignificant, but in the stillness, it carried weight, drawing attention in a way I could feel before I fully understood it. I held it out to her. For a moment, nothing happened. She didn't look up right away. When she did, her gaze moved first to my hand, then to my face. Not with defiance, not with challenge, but with something uncertain, something searching, as if she didn't know what she was supposed to be seeing. Her shoulders tightened, hesitation, waiting for this to turn into something familiar, something she understood. "Come on," I said quietly. My voice sounded different to my own ears, not weaker, but not what they expected. That made it worse. Her eyes narrowed slightly, confusion pulling at the edges of her expression, and for a moment, I thought she might refuse, might stay where she was, just to force the moment back into something she could control. Instead, she stayed, caught, so I gave her something else. "What's your name?" I asked. The question landed harder than anything before it. I saw it in the way her breath caught, in the way her expression faltered completely, stripped of the anger she had been holding onto, leaving something unguarded in its place. No one had asked her that. Not here, not like this. Her mouth parted slightly, then closed again, as if the answer had to be found rather than given. Around us, the room shifted, not loudly, not in any single movement that could be pointed to. This wasn't how it worked. This wasn't what came next. She swallowed. Then, slowly, carefully, like she was testing something she didn't trust, she lifted her hand. Her fingers hovered for a fraction of a second before touching mine, light and tentative, like she expected me to pull away. I didn't. I closed my hand around hers and pulled her up. She rose stiffly, her balance catching just a moment too late. her posture not quite settling into anything recognizable, as if she hadn't decided yet whether she was standing beside me or simply recovering from being forced down.
Samantha,
She said. The name came out quieter than anything she had said before. Sam, I repeated, softer. Something in her expression shifted at that. Not fully, not safely, but enough to register. I'm Cybele. Her eyes flicked up at my name, searching my face for something she could place, something she could use to understand what this meant, what she was supposed to do with it. For a moment, we stood there, not aligned, not opposed. Something new, uncertain, and fragile. Then she pulled her hand back, too quickly, like she had just remembered where she was. The moment snapped, but it didn't disappear. It lingered in the space between us, in the way the air seemed to hold its shape a fraction longer than it should have, as if what had just happened hadn't yet found somewhere to settle. She stepped back from me, not far, just enough to put distance where there had been none, her posture pulling itself upright again with a stiffness that hadn't been there before. Everything about the movement tried to return to something familiar, structured, but it didn't quite land. There was hesitation in it now, a delay, like something inside her had shifted out of place and hadn't settled back. I felt the room change before I could trace how. Not a single movement. Something began to take shape around us, at the edges first, small adjustments, the faint scrape of boots against stone, shoulders angling, bodies turning just slightly, as if pulled by something instinctive rather than decided. Fenris responded before anyone else. The wolves closest to Derek settled inward, their posture tightening, their attention narrowing, the uncertainty that had flickered through them moments ago collapsing into something more familiar, something easier to hold. Others did not follow as quickly. I saw it in their eyes, in the way their gaze moved between me and the girl who had just stood up, caught on a space between us, as if trying to reconcile two things that weren't meant to exist at the same time. A Luna who did not dominate, a Beta who had not been broken. The younger wolves held that hesitation longer, their bodies not fully committing in either direction, as if they hadn't yet decided which version of the moment to believe. They didn't step forward, but they didn't step back either, and that in-between space felt unstable in a way that made the air itself seem thinner. At the center of it, Derek had not moved. He didn't need to. The pack was already beginning to align around him again, their movement giving him weight without him having to claim it, and I could feel the room beginning to tilt in that direction, the earlier fracture closing by degrees. Beyond them, the others did not follow. They held still, watching. I became aware of Jada first, not because she moved, but because she didn't. Her stance remained the same, arms crossed, weight settled evenly, but her gaze had shifted, her face softened, fixed on me in a way that did not waver, carrying the faintest hint of warmth. There was no challenge in it, no dismissal, just recognition. It landed before I could stop it, a brief, grounding warmth in my chest that cut through the tension I was still holding, as if, for a moment, I had done something that made sense to someone who understood a different set of rules. It didn't last, but it mattered. Further out, Mythos watched differently. Their stillness wasn't grounded like Jada's. It was focused, narrowing. Their attention settled on me first, not spreading across the room the way Fenris's had, but locking in with a kind of interest that felt less like judgment and more like curiosity, sharpened into something precise. Then it shifted to him. Victor stood where he had been, untouched by the movement that had begun to pull Fenris inward, not resisting it so much as existing outside of it entirely. He hadn't adjusted, hadn't mirrored the room at all. He was watching me directly and intently. There was no hesitation in it, no uncertainty, no attempt to reconcile what he was seeing with anything else. Something like wanting came off him, something deeper than that. An old word surfaced in my mind, unbidden, pulled from somewhere I hadn't touched in years. Covet. Was he coveting me? The thought should have been absurd. It wasn't. I tried to tell myself that couldn't be the case, but the intensity of his gaze held me there, and my wolf stirred in response, uneasy, conflicted, drawn, and resisting at the same time. His eyes were wrong, too green, too steady. There was nothing soft in them, nothing human in the way they held me. It felt like being looked through, not at, like whatever sat behind that gaze wasn't interested in what I showed the world, only in what lay beneath it. I had the sudden, disorienting sense that if I didn't look away, he would keep going, past the surface, past the shape of me, down into something I didn't fully understand myself. The memory of that feeling brushed against me before I could stop it, the echo of heat pooling low in me, and gold, something vast and coiled and waiting beneath the surface. And for a moment, I felt it again, that same pull, that same sense of being seen without being reduced. My breath caught. I hadn't meant to look at him, but I did, and the instant our eyes met, something in me shifted in a way that had nothing to do with the room, nothing to do with the way Fenris was beginning to reform around Derek, but everything to do with the clarity of that gaze. It felt different, too different, and the awareness of that hit just as quickly as the feeling itself, sharp enough to bring heat to my face before I could stop it. The realization of what it might look like, what it might signal to anyone paying attention. I broke eye contact, too late, because the room had already begun to change again. The shift didn't stop when I looked away. It sharpened. I didn't move, but the urge was there. It didn't come as a thought, not something I could argue with or push aside. It rose from deeper than that, from somewhere in my body that recognized what stood in front of me long before my mind could catch up. Strength, authority, the weight of something that did not bend. It pressed against me from every direction at once. Derek in front of me, the pack behind him, the expectation of all of them settling into the space like something inevitable, something already decided. My breath shortened without my permission, my shoulders tightened, and beneath it, my wolf responded, not in defiance, but in recognition. Lower yourself, press your belly to the ground. The instinct slid into place with a quiet certainty that made my stomach twist, a pull downward that had nothing to do with thought and everything to do with what I was, what I had always been expected to be. Yield to the alpha. The words didn't form fully, but the meaning was there all the same, threading through me, aligning my body with a shape I knew too well. Derek's gaze settled on Samantha, and the fury in it was worse for how controlled it had become. He moved toward her with unhurried precision, every step deliberate, the line between wolf and man blurring in the way his presence filled the space. There was nothing frantic in it, nothing uncertain, just weight, just certainty.
Look at you,
He said softly.
She speaks kindly to you once, and you come apart in front of the whole pack.
Samantha went rigid. He stepped in close, and for one disorienting heartbeat, it looked like he meant to soothe her, his hand brushing a strand of hair back from her cheek with almost insulting gentleness. Then he struck her. The sound cracked through the chamber. The force of it wasn't wild or explosive. It was measured, casual, enough to send her crumpling to the stone, as if her body already knew how to fall.
Fenris does not break because someone offers it pity,
He said, his voice carrying now, not raised, but undeniable.
It does not survive on compassion. It survives because the strong remain strong, and the weak learn to obey before they shame the pack.
He crouched beside her with the same easy control, running his hand through her hair in a gesture that might have been affection if it weren't so deliberate. Then his fingers closed at the back of her neck, tightening just enough to pull her gaze upward.
If she gets in your head again,
He said quietly.
You bite her for trying.
Then his eyes lifted to mine.
Whatever game you think you're playing, Luna, it makes wolves weak.
A beat.
And weak things do not rule Fenris.
He let out a quiet, almost bored exasperation as he rose to his full height.
Perhaps you don't understand that,
He said.
Your old alpha was too gentle.
His gaze held mine, steady, assured.
But don't worry.
A faint curl at the edge of his mouth.
I'm a very good teacher.
Another beat.
And I'll make you an eager student.
My gaze dropped just slightly, and I felt it the moment it happened. The shift, the confirmation. Derek saw it. Of course he did. Something in his expression didn't change. Not visibly, not in a way anyone else would have caught, but I felt it all the same. The way his presence settled heavier, more certain. The way the space between us seemed to close without him taking another step, and my body answered. A heat coiled low in my stomach, sharp and unwelcome, twisting together with something far worse, something that felt like anticipation. I hated it. I felt it anyway. My wolf leaned into it, not consciously, not willingly, but it recognized him, recognized the strength, recognized what it meant to stand before something that could take control and make the world simpler again, quieter, ordered in a way that removed the need to choose, to fight, to think. My fingers curled at my sides. I could feel the tension building in my legs, the subtle shift in balance that would make it easier to drop, easier to give in to the pull that was already dragging me downward, inch by inch. I didn't want to. That didn't seem to matter. The pack pressed in behind it, amplifying everything, turning instinct into pressure, pressure into certainty, until it felt like the ground itself was tilting, guiding me into place. And part of me, a part I didn't want to look at too closely, wanted to let it happen, wanted the weight of it, the finality of it, to be seen, to be claimed, to stop fighting something I had never once won against. My breath caught. Derek stepped closer, not touching, not yet, but close enough that I could feel him, the heat of him, the certainty of him, the quiet, controlled violence that didn't need to be used to be understood. And my wolf gave in. Not fully, not yet, but enough. I felt it tipping, not toward choice, toward collapse. And I knew if it went any further, I wouldn't stop it. And then, just as it felt like I was slipping past the point where I could stop it, the howl came, low and steady and absolute, not rising, not breaking, but settling into the space with a weight that did not need force to make itself known. Every wolf stopped, not gradually, not in confusion, but all at once, caught mid-step, mid-breath, mid-decision, as if something older than instinct had reached down and closed its hand around the moment, holding it exactly where it was and refusing to let it move any further. The pressure did not disappear. It froze, held in place, stretched tight, but no longer advancing. The arc of bodies around me locked, just short of completion. Derek went still with them, not yielding, not retreating, but no longer closing the distance. The forward motion arrested so precisely it felt like a blade stopped a hair's breadth from breaking skin. Then the elder Lunas stepped forward. They did not surge into the space. They did not challenge it. They simply entered it, and the effect was immediate. Not because they overpowered what had been building, but because the moment itself seemed to shift around them, as if something older had laid claim to it and decided it no longer belonged to Derek. The howl did not fade. It sank into the stone beneath us, a low, resonant echo that seemed to take root rather than dissipate, as though the ground itself carried it, held it, remembered it. And with that, the pressure changed. Not gone, never gone, but no longer his. Derek didn't step back. He didn't lower his gaze, but the certainty of his advance had been taken from him, held in suspension where it could not complete. I heard her name before I understood who she was.
Clotho.
It came from somewhere behind me, passed in a low, almost reverent whisper between second-ear wolves, the kind of sound that carried not because it was loud, but because it was recognized. She moved without urgency, silver hair catching the light as she stepped into the space Derek had been shaping, her presence settling with a quiet finality that did not need to announce itself because everything in the room adjusted to it anyway. Behind her, the shadows shifted and two figures stepped forward just enough to be seen, not claiming the center, not asserting themselves, but anchoring the moment all the same. I didn't need to look at them directly to feel what they were. Older, established, final in a way that made everything around them feel provisional by comparison. To her left, something stranger moved. Bone and metal caught the torchlight in uneven glints, and I felt her attention before I fully saw her, sliding across me in a way that made my skin prickle. Not invasive, not judging, but aware in a way that felt sharper than either.
Atropos.
The name surfaced in a half-whisper, uncertain, as though speaking it too clearly might draw more of her attention than anyone wanted. Then the scarred Luna stepped forward.
Lachesis.
That name did not hesitate. It spread. I felt it move through the second ears like a shift in pressure, something old and unresolved rising to the surface the moment she entered the space. Something they all recognized, even if they did not speak it aloud. She did not hide what had been done to her. The marks along her throat and collarbone caught the light, pale, jagged, unmistakable. And once seen, they refused to be ignored, refusing to let the moment remain what it had been before she stepped into it. Derek's attention fixed on her fully, and something in the room tightened again, not with momentum this time, but with memory.
We will not allow you to harm another Luna,
Clotho said, her voice calm and level, carrying without effort, the words settling into the space with the same quiet certainty as the howl before it. Derek's jaw tightened, the control in him holding, but thinner now, more precise.
I'm not touching her.
The words were measured, contained, but something beneath them had shifted, sharpened into something unmistakably personal. Lachesis didn't step back.
You won't ever get the chance to,
she said, her voice quieter, heavier, carrying a weight that did not need volume to be felt.
You've already shown what happens when you lose control.
The shift came again, but this time, it didn't hide. It moved through the second ears closest to Derek first, subtle but unmistakable. Something in their alignment, loosening without breaking. Space, opening, where there had been none before. Their certainty, no longer seamless. No one stepped away, but no one held quite as firmly either. The first ears felt it without understanding it, their attention snapping between Derek and Lachesis, something tightening in their expressions, as instinct caught the fracture before thought could name it. Jada's voice entered the moment without rising.
House Ganesha remembers what you did last year.
She didn't move as she spoke, her stance as steady as the stone beneath our feet, her gaze fixed on Derek with a quiet, unyielding certainty.
If anyone here has forgotten,
She added.
we can remind them.
The silence that followed pressed in, heavy, expectant, and then it broke, not sharply, softly, amusement slipping into the room where it didn't belong. The sound came from Mythos, a ripple of quiet laughter that carried just enough to be heard, light on the surface, but edged with something sharper, something that did not bend to the structure of Fenris at all. One of them stepped forward into the edge of the light, tie-dye fabric catching color in shifting tones, her iridescent hair refusing to settle into any single shade as she tilted her head, studying Derek with open, almost delighted interest. Then she laughed.
A sad little king,
She said lightly.
with no queen willing to mate with him.
The words landed gently. The effect did not. Mythos answered with soft amusement, breath that might have been laughter, might have been something else entirely, their eyes bright, attentive, watching with a kind of interest that held no fear and offered no respect. Derek felt it. I saw it in the way his shoulders tightened, in the brief flicker of something hotter behind his eyes, before it was forced back down, controlled, contained, locked beneath the surface, where it couldn't spill over. Not here, not now. Then something moved behind her, not quickly, not enough to track cleanly. The darkness she stood in didn't stay where it should have, shifting just slightly, as if it had depth where there should have been none, as if something inside it had adjusted its weight. 2 points of violet light opened within it, watching. I couldn't tell how far back they were, or how large. For a moment, I wasn't sure they were eyes at all, only that they were fixed on the room in a way that made the space around them feel occupied. A hand followed, if that was what it was. It emerged slowly, as if the darkness had decided to release it rather than reveal it, large enough that it should have looked wrong wrapped around her waist, and yet it fit there with an ease that suggested it had always been there, familiar, possessive. She didn't startle, didn't resist. If anything, she leaned into it slightly, her smile sharpening just a fraction as she allowed herself to be drawn back, not pulled, claimed. The light didn't follow her. She disappeared into the dark instead, the iridescence of her hair dimming as she crossed that invisible threshold until she was gone entirely, and the darkness settled again. But it didn't feel empty, not anymore. And for just a moment, Derek's composure slipped, not outwardly, but enough. A slight tightening at the edges, a flicker of something colder passing through him before he reassembled himself, the mask settling back into place, his posture straightening, his presence reasserting itself by force of will alone. At the edges of the room, another shift followed. Silvara. They had not reacted before. Now they did. Not by stepping forward, not by challenging, but by observing. Small screens flickered to life in their hands, pale light reflecting across their faces as they lifted them, angled them, framing the moment with quiet precision.
Collect this.
Don't miss it.
The whispers barely carried. They didn't need to. The intent did. This would not stay here. This would not fade. Derek didn't look at them, but he knew, and the knowledge settled into the room just as heavily as everything else. The pressure shifted again, not easing, but layering, the earlier tension settling into something heavier, more deliberate, as if the room itself had decided to remember. Lachesis did not let it pass.
You spilled blood that was not yours to spill,
she said, her voice quiet, but carrying cleanly through the space.
You turned your strength against your own battle brother.
Nothing in her tone softened the words. They landed as fact, not accusation.
And you wonder,
she continued,
why no Luna stands beside you. You stink of dishonor.
This time the silence held. It didn't fracture. It set. Then Derek spoke.
One day.
His voice remained controlled, though tighter now, drawn thinner by the weight pressing against it.
You will watch your tongue when you stand in my presence, and I will remind you of your proper place.
The meaning didn't need to be explained. It moved through the room anyway. The second ears felt it, not as loyalty, but as something colder, something that tightened rather than unified, unease settling into the spaces where certainty had been. Lachesis didn't step back, but I saw it, the tightening in her shoulders, the way something in her locked, not fear, memory. Clotho moved. She stepped in close and draped her arms over Lachesis's shoulders, not gently, not cautiously, but with an ease that made it unmistakable. This was not a Luna standing alone.
And that day,
Clotho said calmly,
is not today.
Her gaze lifted to Derek, steady, unhurried.
So until then, you will be respectful to our pack's Lunas.
She let the words settle.
Or I will ask Bastion to make me a nice fur cloak from your hide.
Something passed through the room then, not a sound, not a movement, but a shift that ran beneath everything, like a current catching and redirecting the weight of the moment. Clotho's attention remained fixed on Derek. Behind her, the crowd parted, not quickly, not out of fear, but in recognition. He stepped through it, massive, unhurried. Each step carried a quiet, undeniable weight, the kind that did not need to be demonstrated because it was already understood, already accepted, already built into the space itself. I heard his name move through the room in low whispers. Bastion. He came to stand behind Clotho, close enough that the difference in scale was impossible to ignore. The breadth of him, the ease with which he occupied the space, the sense of contained violence that did not need to be shown to be known. He didn't look at Derek. He didn't need to. Instead, his hand settled at Clotho's waist with quiet familiarity, and he leaned down to press a brief kiss to her lips, as if the rest of us were incidental.
Would you like a cloak?
He asked softly, his voice deep, almost conversational.
Or a coat? I seem to recall I already made you a cloak last year.
The implications settled into the silence, unspoken but fully understood. Clotho smiled faintly, leaning into him for just a moment before straightening again, her attention returning to Derek as if nothing had changed, and everything had. Derek did not step forward again, but he did not yield. The fury remained, contained and sharpened, held just beneath the surface, where it could not spill, not here, not now. And the room did not forget. The tension didn't break with Bastion's presence or Clotho's words. It lingered instead, stretched thin across the space, like something waiting for the moment it could gather itself again. And I felt it in the tightness of my chest, in the stiffness of my shoulders, in the way my breath refused to settle, no matter how carefully I tried to steady it. Slowly, I became aware of my body again, my hands first, still tense at my sides, fingers curled, as if they had forgotten how to release. Then my breath, shallow, catching slightly before it could deepen. Then the rest of me, awareness returning in pieces, as though I had been standing just outside myself and was only now finding my way back in. I hadn't moved, not since the howl, and now I wasn't sure if I was meant to. Something had shifted, not just in the room, in me, and it didn't feel finished. A presence settled beside me, Clotho. I felt her before I turned, the steadiness of her attention anchoring rather than pressing, a quiet certainty that didn't demand but left no room to refuse.
Come, Luna,
she said. The words were soft, but they carried, not a command, not quite, something older than that. I moved before I could think about it, my body answering her voice without hesitation, stepping out of the space where everything still felt too exposed, too visible. The room parted as I did, not cleanly, not willingly, but enough. Bodies shifted just enough to allow passage without breaking the shape they had settled into, and I could feel their attention as I moved through them, lingering, measuring, not yet done with what they had seen. The first years watched openly, their expressions tight and uncertain, their understanding still forming around something they had not expected to see. The second years were different. They didn't stare, not directly, but I could feel them all the same, the way their attention tracked the space I left behind, the distance that had opened between them and Derek, the uncertainty that had not fully closed. She stood among them, not looking at me, not looking at him, held somewhere in between. Further out, Mythos still watched, their earlier amusement thinning into something sharper, more deliberate, as if the moment had shifted from something entertaining into something worth remembering. Silvara had not lowered their phones. The faint glow of their screens followed me as I passed, the subtle tilt of their wrists adjusting, capturing, preserving, and the realization of that lingered longer than I wanted it to. This would not stay here. It would move, spread, be seen, judged. There was no taking it back. I didn't look at Derek, not at first. I didn't want to see what waited there, but something in me pulled anyway, slow and reluctant, until my gaze lifted just enough to catch him at the edge of my vision. He hadn't moved, not from where the Lunas had stopped him. His posture was unchanged. His presence wasn't. The fury was still there, contained, colder now, no longer needing the room to give it weight. And I knew, without needing to think it through, this wasn't over. It hadn't even begun to be over. My gaze shifted again before I could stop it. Victor. He hadn't moved either, but the stillness around him felt different now, heavier, more deliberate, as though whatever I had glimpsed before had not faded, but settled deeper beneath the surface. He was still watching me, not urgently, not protectively, just certain. That same pull stirred again, quiet but insistent, the sense of something that stood outside everything I had just stepped through, something that did not bend to the same rules. For a moment, I leaned toward it. My wolf recoiled instantly, sharp and unmistakable. That doesn't belong to us. The resistance cut cleanly through the pull, not erasing it, but refusing it, drawing a line I didn't fully understand, but felt all the same. I broke eye contact before it could linger, before it could become something I couldn't take back. Clotho guided me forward, without touching me, her presence enough to keep me moving, carrying me toward the edge of the chamber, where the pressure finally began to thin, not disappearing, but loosening just enough that I could breathe without feeling like the air itself was watching me. And as I stepped out of its center, into space that only felt stable by comparison, the understanding settled into me without comfort, without resolution, clear in a way that left no room to soften it. I had been named Luna, but I did not understand what that meant. Not here, not like this, and whatever it required of me, I would have to learn it before Derek decided it for me, or I became the kind of wolf who let him.
Well, Cybele survived another day. I'll admit, I wasn't sure she had it in her, even with me keeping watch. Subscribe, share this with your friends, and stick around. She's going to need a pack of her own if I'm going to keep her out of Derek's claws. Then drop a comment below and tell us this. If the stones named you Luna, how would you handle it?